The F Pace takes Jaguar in a bold and different direction and will be crucial to the brand's future if it's to expand its sales and take on key rivals. It brings a well-judged compromise of class, performance and capability to the luxury mid-sized SUV segment that provides a tempting alternative to the established German players in this sector. In short, this car was well worth the wait.
If there's one type of car that epitomises this period in motoring history, it's the SUV. So many buyers desire them, and Jaguar wants a slice of that action. As a result, the British company has finally brought us the first ever model of this kind, complete with high-riding driving position, four-wheel drive, and even some decent off-road ability. Welcome to the F Pace. So why has it taken so long for this British maker to enter a segment its German rivals have been dominating for decades? Well, the answer probably lies in Jaguar's brand partnership with Land Rover and management disinclination for the two marques to cross into each other's territories. But it was thinking that had to change, and did, when this F Pace finally hit the market in the spring of 2016. Given the Jaguar Land Rover company background, you might quite understandably expect this to be little more than a rebadged Range Rover Sport beneath the skin. Or if not that, then perhaps a somewhat larger, more dynamic looking take on a Discovery Sport, that car being slightly closer to this F Pace's size and price. Refreshingly though, this model is neither of those things. In fact, it's resolutely different in its approach from anything Land Rover makes, with underpinnings owing far more to Jaguar's XE and XF saloons, both of those cars having been engineered to accommodate four-wheel drive. As a result, there should be the potential for the kind of properly driver-orientated handling dynamics that a Jaguar SUV really ought to have, and will need if it's to realise marketing ambitions that in price and performance see tough and well-established competitors being targeted. Lower range models are pitched against desirable versions of prestige-branded compact SUVs like BMW's X3 and Audi's Q5, while quicker F-Pace variants must match up against the likes of benchmark performance models in this segment, like Porsche's Macan and AMG versions of the Mercedes GLC. All of this requires Jaguar's first SUV to be more than merely very good. It has to be brilliant. So is it? Let's find out. Virtually all SUV makers will tell you that their cars are luxurious, sporty and capable. Usually though, the truth is that the model in question especially emphasises one particular attribute, often to the detriment of the others. Take the mid-sized luxury segment of this market. A Porsche Macan is great to drive, but pretty limited off-road. A Mercedes GLC feels luxurious, but isn't especially rewarding behind the wheel. And a Land Rover Discovery Sport will take on the wilderness, but it won't make you feel special and cosseted when you take a seat inside. So can a better compromise between all these virtues really be reached? Well, this car claims to offer it. When Jaguar makes that claim, you tend to sit up and take notice. After all, the brand knows a thing or two about ride and handling, and its Land Rover connections have given it plenty of understanding on the subject of four-wheel drive too. Plus, of course, the company has had an awfully long time to stand back and look at the market and then come up with something better. Something like this F Pace? Well, on paper, it looks as if it might well be rather good. The low-slung looks are matched by equally sophisticated underpinnings, primarily fashioned from lightweight aluminium. Now that sounds good in the marketing material, but it's equally important out on the road because it deals with the issue that blights the handling and efficiency of almost all SUVs: excessive weight. An F-Pace is significantly lighter than its key rivals, to the point where it doesn't actually weigh very much more than your local sales rep's Mondeo or Insignia. And that's something you feel the very first time you throw this car into a corner. Yes, there is a touch more body roll than you get in one of the brand's XE or XF saloons, and yes, the electric steering is a fraction less feelsome than an enthusiastic driver might ideally like. Neither of these things, though, significantly affect the way that you can hustle this car through any given bend, progressing in a manner that simply wouldn't be possible in most other SUVs. Of course, there are reasons for this, and they go beyond the mere shedding of weight. There's the kind of torque vectoring system that you get on performance coupes that, through tight turns, transfers traction to the wheel that can best make use of it. Plus, when Jaguar says this car's all-wheel drive system was originally developed on the track, it means Silverstone and not the Serengeti. It's the defiantly rear-biased system first seen on the company's F-Type sports car, one that never diverts more than 50% of its power up front, a process that happens in milliseconds as soon as the first signs of wheel slip are detected. You don't have to have your F Pace with all-wheel drive. Jaguar tells us that it likes to give customers the choice as to whether they want to upgrade from the standard rear-driven setup. Look at the small print though, and in reality you realise that there isn't much choice. Most buyers will want an automatic gearbox, and for that you have to have 4x4 traction. It's just as well then that this car is at its best with both of these things fitted. The self-shifting transmission may be an 8-speeder rather than the 9-speed setup you get on a comparable Discovery Sport, but the ZF unit is smooth, it's quick to kick down, and it's rewarding to use if you click into the quicker responding S setting or take control with these steering wheel paddles. We should talk about engines, or perhaps the lack of them. I mean, for a launch, virtually the whole of the F Pace lineup was built around a single power plant, the 2-litre Ingenium diesel used in the Jaguar XE and XF models that share this car's basic architecture. A unit provided here in a single 180 PS state of tune. With 400 newton meters of torque, it's man enough to pull this car along with reasonable zip. 62 miles an hour from rest takes a fraction under 9 seconds on the way to 130 miles an hour, but it can't match the in-gear acceleration you get in something like a rival Mercedes GLC 250D, so clearly progress needs to be made here. Your Jaguar salesperson will point out that there is another diesel option, and in fact we're trying it here. A 300 PS 3-litre V6 unit puts out 700 newton meters of torque. It powers you to 62 miles an hour in 6.2 seconds and tops out at 150 miles an hour. Those are impressive figures, but possibly rather more than you actually need. A feeling that'll probably be confirmed in your mind when you note that this top diesel engine only comes in pricey F Pace S trim, which means that a minor lottery win will be needed for ownership. Not an issue? Well, then why buy a diesel at all? The other engine available in top F Pace S spec is the wonderfully emotive 380 PS 3-litre V6 supercharged petrol unit we've enjoyed so much in the F-Type. It makes 62 miles an hour in 5.5 seconds, has to be artificially restrained at 155 miles an hour, and potential Porsche Macan buyers will love it. Both V6s come only with all-wheel drive and auto transmission. I mentioned the Macan. Jaguar wants to be able, with this F Pace, to offer that car's involving driving experience to buyers needing to pay a more realistic asking price in this segment. And we've already touched upon some of the ways that the Coventry company has gone about developing this car in order to deliver on that objective. Another key tool in the F Pace's armoury is a Jaguar Drive Control, one of those setups that allows you to alter throttle response, steering feel, and on an automatic model like this one, auto gear shift change timings dependent on the way that you want to drive. Simply weight your choice between the various modes provided by these rather fiddly buttons down below the gear selector. Normal and Eco are fairly self-explanatory, while Dynamic sharpens the car up nicely. There's also an extra winter option that on automatic models activates all-surface progress control, a low-speed cruise control that helps maintain progress and avoid wheel spin on low traction surfaces. If you want to go further and make the Jaguar drive control settings more fundamental in altering the driving character of your car, then you'll need to spend extra on the optional Adaptive Dynamics adjustable damping system your dealer will want to tell you about. This monitors body movements 100 times a second and wheel movements 500 times a second, so the car's suspension can always automatically be precisely configured for the road you're on and the mood you're in. On all-wheel drive automatic models, there's also the option of Jaguar's configurable dynamics package, which allows you to set up your F Pace just like a racing driver would set up his race car. With this, using the in-control infotainment touchscreen, you can add in your own personal settings for throttle mapping, gear shift changes, steering feel, and, if fitted, the adaptive dynamics dampers. In other words, when Jaguar calls this a sports car, there's more to that badge than mere marketing rhetoric. But of course, this F Pace must be more than merely a sports car. That's what's made its development so challenging. Can it function off-road as an SUV too? Well, potentially yes, as long as your expectations aren't too extreme. All models can tow up to 2,400 kilograms. Yes, even the four-cylinder ones. And though, as I mentioned previously, the four-wheel drive system is primarily designed for extra traction on tarmac, its integrated IDD, Intelligent Driveline Dynamics control system, works very well off-road too, continuously estimating not only the friction between the tyres and the surface, but also how much of the available grip is being exploited at each wheel. Various electronic systems further help things here. Hill Launch Assist stops the car from rolling backwards as you pull away on a steep incline, and automatic models come fitted with the all-surface progress control feature mentioned earlier. Plus, there's a low-friction launch option you can select from the in-control touchscreen that regulates the throttle to restrict wheel spin as you pull away. For further rough road prowess, you'll need to add in what Jaguar calls ASR, or Adaptive Surface Response, an extra feature that comes packaged up with the extra cost Adaptive Dynamics adaptive damping system we were talking about earlier, and is limited to use with the four-cylinder diesel engine. Having ASR on your F Pace when you're driving in the rough is a bit like having an off-road expert sitting next to you who takes over and configures all the car's systems. The steering, the throttle, stability system intervention, ABS, everything really, to ideally suit whatever conditions you're travelling through. Working seamlessly, it adapts the setup quite differently for surfaces like snow, ice, deep gravel, mud ruts or wet tarmac, leaving you to simply concentrate on driving. Very clever. ASR was developed at the challenging Land Rover Eastner test track, which we can tell you from personal experience includes rutted terrain that you simply couldn't even consider attempting in one of this car's German rivals. Well, not if you wanted to avoid a trip to the body shop anyway. That an F Pace can cope here is down to all the things we just mentioned, plus the kind of properly elevated ground clearance that's so often lacking in more dynamically orientated luxury SUVs. This Jaguar sits a decent 213 millimeters off the ground, and that's one reason why it could wade through water up to 525 millimeters deep and cope with maximum approach and departure angles of 25.5 and 26 degrees respectively. It's yet another thing you simply wouldn't expect this car to be able to do. It says much that Jaguar markets this F Pace as a sports car, albeit a very practical one. The stylish shape is pretty much exactly what we saw from the Coventry company's CX-17 prototype, a car unveiled back in 2013 at the Frankfurt Motor Show. In production form, the lines are just as eye-catching. Chief stylist Ian Callum refusing to be constrained by the SUV sector's usual aesthetic design cues, instead delivering a much more dynamic silhouette, with the roofline lower and closer to the road than anything else in the segment. Let's take a closer look and start up front. Now, there's an obvious and distinct resemblance to the XE and XF saloons with these slim headlights that incorporate J-Blade daytime driving lamps, and they use xenon technology if you go for a plusher variant like this one. They flank this intimidatingly large mesh grille with its classic Jaguar Growler badge. This sportier S version has a more aggressive style to its bumper design, as does the R Sport model. Now, the extra attitude suits this smartly purposeful shape. Now, further down lies another air intake, while on either side of the bumper are prominent inlets to let even more cooling breeze into that engine compartment. It's not all bluff and bluster either. Jaguar says the F Pace is one of the most aerodynamically efficient SUVs there is, with a .34 CD figure that compares well with the executive estates, never mind off-roaders. You appreciate that better from the side, a perspective from which the high waistline and the huge wheels dominate. Jaguar hasn't messed around with its rolling stock here. The smallest rims you can get on an F Pace are 18-inch items, and this test car comes with the enormous optional 22-inch alloys that many owners are likely to be tempted into specifying. Jaguar's design team has done everything possible to break up and disguise the height of this SUV. Hence this slash in the bodywork along the bottom of the doors. There's a powerfully strong shoulder line too, while this line that runs from the wing vent into the front door is another neat touch. I'll step around to the rear, and the first thing you tend to notice is the lights. Now, they could have been lifted straight from an F-Type Roadster and lend this Jaguar a much leaner and sportier appearance than most of its rivals can offer. The tailgate gets a purposeful roof spoiler, while further down, the skid plate built into this lower bumper section is one of the F-Pace's few styling concessions to the SUV genre. Flanking this are twin exhaust pipes with fog lamps placed at either end. Now, of course, as usual, what's more important is the stuff that you can't see. Around 80% of the body is fashioned from lightweight aluminium, and some of it, the cross chassis rail, for example, even uses high-tech magnesium. And most competitors look decidedly unsophisticated in comparison, and as a result, all of them weigh more. A rival Mercedes GLC, for example, is a substantial 180 kilograms heavier. Time to take a seat inside and check out the so-called Sports Command driving position. This delivers a kind of high-set, authoritative seating placement that SUV drivers like so much, without perching you so far up that you lose the feel of being an integral part of the whole experience. It's a very well-judged compromise, positioning you perfectly for the kind of involving drive promised by that sports car marketing rhetoric. The whole cabin ambiance is designed to make anyone coming to this car fresh from one of Jaguar's saloons feel instantly at home, with the dials, the switchgear and the rising circular gear selector that you get in automatic models all familiar fare. As usual in the executive segment models, the centre of the fascia is dominated by a colour infotainment screen, this 8-inch in-control touch display being the same as that used across Jaguar and Land Rover's other more recent models. As with those cars, it can't be operated with a kind of iDrive style rotary infotainment controller that direct German SUV rivals offer, perhaps because of the possible confusion this might have created with the similar looking rotary gear selector I mentioned earlier. Now, this means that commands you can't input via the steering wheel buttons have to be submitted via the often inexact process of voice control if you don't want to end up stabbing away at the touchscreen and covering it with fingerprints. To be fair, the system's screen and voice functionality do work well, and the in-control setup's general layout and ease of use would be difficult to better. It's your access point not only to the expected audio, climate, telephone and navigation functions, but also to in-car Wi-Fi and a whole suite of in-control connected car technologies, including an in-control apps feature that allows you to select from the whole series of downloadable compatible applications. If you want to go further, you can spend more on a pricey in-control Touch Pro option that gives you a larger 10.2-inch touchscreen with advanced predictive navigation and a 10GB hard drive. Plus, as part of the package, much the same 12.3-inch TFT virtual instrument display that you'd find in Jaguar's larger XJ saloon. Personally, we prefer the clearly presented traditional instrument binnacle gauges that most F Pace owners will stick with. These deeply cowled dials separated by a neat driver information display and viewed through this tactile, leather-stitched, three-spoke multifunction steering wheel. Lovely touches are plentiful. Take these touch-sensitive overhead lights or the ignition button that pulses red prior to startup. The seats are beautiful too, leather trimmed as standard with the optional cooling and electric functions you'd expect. Overall then, there's really not much to criticise. Rear visibility isn't especially good thanks to the raked back rear screen, hampered further by the rising door line and the narrow rear quarter windows. The standard 80-watt audio setup isn't particularly impressive, and storage space could certainly be better. The door pockets and the glove box are both a little small, as is this centre storage bin between the seats, incorporating USB, aux-in, 12-volt and SD card sockets. It'd also be nice if, as standard, these two cup holders below the gear stick could be concealed when they're not in use with a kind of neat sliding cover provided by some premium rivals. Time to take a seat in the rear. Now, as in the front, the doors open wide, which means it'll be easy to reach in and fit something like a child's seat. And as you get in, also as in the front, you slide onto the seat rather than clamber up into it, as would be the case with some other SUVs. Once installed, two tall adults get more headroom than you might expect the raked back roofline to be able to provide. And there's reasonable standards of knee room too. No, of course it's not up to the standards of something like a Range Rover Sport or a BMW X5, but then this isn't that kind of car. And more natural competitors like BMW's X3 and Porsche's Macan will feel decidedly more cramped for rear-seated folk. As with those rivals, the cabin will feel pretty cramped if you have to fit in a third occupant, thanks primarily to this high centre transmission tunnel. There's a central armrest with twin cup holders, plus a 12-volt socket and two USB points to keep the kids quiet with their games on those longer journeys. Now let's have a look at the boot, accessed on all models via a powered tailgate. It rises to reveal one of the largest luggage compartments in the mid-sized SUV segment, offering a 650-litre capacity that's 100 litres bigger than you get in, say, a rival Mercedes GLC, and a total only bettered in the sector by Land Rover's Discovery Sport. The cargo area is very usably shaped too, and there are 4 sidewall hooks and 4 more floor securing points to help keep loads in place, plus the usual optional nets and rails if you want to go further. Now, we like the standard provision of this reversible boot floor, fitted out with carpet on one side and with rubber on the other, so you can keep muddy wellies and dogs in the boot without constantly worrying about messing up the carpet. Lift the cargo floor and more compartmentalised space is available, although only because Jaguar declines to provide any kind of standard space-saver spare wheel. That's a disappointing decision given that this is a pretty capable SUV. It's also surprising you have to pay extra for catches to push forward the rear bench. These would normally be here. It's an option that costs hardly anything more, so it seems pretty mean it's not standard on a car like this. Still, the rear bench does flatten into a useful 40-20-40 formation, so you can lower the middle section and still have seating for 4 adults. With all 3 rear seat segment portions dropped down, the floor isn't quite flat, but the 1,740 litre cargo capacity provided is impressively big for this class of car. Given the rival models Jaguar hopes to target in the mid-size premium SUV market, the F Pace's pricing is relatively predictable. The mainstream range starting at around £35,000 and extending up towards the £55,000 mark. Bear in mind that the all-wheel drive system and the automatic gearbox that you'll probably want cost extra with most trim levels. 4x4 traction demands a premium of just under £2,000 over the standard rear-wheel drive setup, and you have to pay it if you're looking for the option of automatic transmission, and that's an extra £1,750. With both of these features fitted, plus a few well-chosen extras, you'll probably need to think in terms of your budgeting starting point for this car being around £40,000. Now, all the volume trim levels are built around the 2-litre 180 PS diesel unit that Jaguar thinks most buyers will want. But if you can find just over £50,000 and stretch to pricier, more dynamic F Pace S spec, then you get a couple of V6 options. A 380 PS supercharged petrol power plant or this 300 PS diesel variant. Now, both of these 3-litre models come with 4-wheel drive and that 8-speed auto box as standard. On to the value proposition that F Pace pricing represents. So essentially what's on offer here is the sporty, dynamic look and feel you get with a BMW X4 or a Mercedes GLC Coupe, but with the kind of lower price and greater practicality that will be provided by a BMW X3 or a standard shape Mercedes GLC, the two cars this Jaguar is directly priced against. It's a strong proposition. After all, going from an X3 to an X4 or from a standard GLC to a GLC Coupe will cost you somewhere in the £3,000 to £5,000 bracket. And that's money that F Pace buyers can spend more productively. Of course, there are other potential competitors you could consider, but they're not really as directly comparable. Premium branded rival models like Volvo's XC60 and Lexus's NX are fractionally smaller and quite a bit less interesting to drive, although they will save you a few thousand in terms of upfront asking cost. Audi's Q5 is perhaps more likely to be on a typical Jaguar buyer's shopping list in this segment, but it won't save you much over an F Pace, and it doesn't have the same dynamic look and feel. Land Rover's Discovery Sport certainly can't offer that, though it shares this Jaguar's 2-litre diesel engine and has the advantage of 7 seats and extra off-road ability. We don't think potential F Pace buyers will prioritise either of those things though, and they might note that when fitted with the same 180 PS diesel engine, the Land Rover product only costs just over £2,000 less. If you're fortunate enough to be able to consider the top V6 engined F Pace S variants like the car we're trying here, then as well as the priciest 6-cylinder sporting Mercedes GLC Coupe and BMW X4 variants, which cost only a fraction less, you'll probably also be looking at Porsche's Macan. And the Macan certainly has great dynamic appeal, and directly comparable variants cost around £7,000 less. Against that though, the Porsche has less power, a smaller boot, and actually probably won't cost you a lot less to buy once you've brought its specification up to the standard of this Jag. Having been through that kind of comparison process, we wouldn't be surprised if you came down in favour of the Jaguar in this closely fought sector. And if you're leaning in that direction, then a strong showing in terms of standard specification might well seal the deal in the Coventry company's favour. So that's what we'll go on and look at now. At first glance, in this regard, things look quite promising, given that even entry-level prestige variants come very well equipped. Here you can expect to find 18-inch alloy wheels, roof rails, halogen headlamps with daytime running lights, all-round parking sensors, auto headlamps and wipers, LED rear lights, an alarm and a powered tailgate. There are plenty of standard dynamic driving aids too, so on the move you'll benefit from the Jaguar Drive Control system that via various settings allows you to tweak the steering and the throttle response to suit the way that you want to drive. Gear change timings too, if, like most buyers, you've opted for automatic transmission. Cornering traction is aided by a torque vectoring setup. Inside the cabin, prestige spec buyers enjoy Taurus leather upholstery with 8-way manual adjustment for the front chairs. There's also interior mood lighting, a reversible boot floor and keyless ignition, as well as more expected executive niceties like cruise control, Bluetooth for your phone and USB connectivity. On the subject of media features, Jaguar's 8-inch central dash infotainment screen comes with in-control touch navigation. It offers voice control. It can create in the car a Wi-Fi hotspot and can also be used to operate a series of what the brand calls in-control apps via your smartphone. In fact, you'll be using your Apple or Android device quite a lot as part of the standard electronic features designed to make ownership of this Jaguar easier and more interactive. Take In-Control Remote Premium. It's a system that lets you work the door locks remotely from your phone, set the cabin temperature before you reach the vehicle, and use a beep and flash function to help find your F Pace in a packed parking area. Then there's In-Control Protect, via which you can use your phone to remotely check your fuel level or tell a breakdown garage your exact location, should you ever have a mechanical problem. The sportier alternative to prestige trim for F Pace buyers lies with the R Sport models. Here, the mechanical recipe is the same, but the packaging looks notably more dynamic. And that means more aggressively styled front and rear bumpers, piercing xenon headlights, body-coloured door cladding and gloss black trim for the roof rails and the window surrounds. While inside there's an R Sport steering wheel and polished aluminium foot pedals. If sheer luxury is a greater priority, then you'll prefer to stretch to Portfolio trim, which further adds larger 19-inch alloy wheels, a heated front screen, power folding mirrors and keyless entry. Inside, Portfolio trim entitles you to upgraded Windsor leather upholstery with 10-way electric seat adjustment at the front, plus a rear view camera and a 380-watt 11-speaker Meridian sound system. Finally, if you've the funds to ensure that nothing but the best will do, you'll want a V6 F Pace S model like the one we're trying for this film. Now here, as well as all those Portfolio features, Jaguar includes huge 20-inch alloy wheels with larger 350mm front disc brakes, a more bespoke S body kit and an adaptive dynamics system that also allows you to tweak suspension settings via the various Jaguar drive control modes. Onto options, and as you can imagine, there's a vast selection of extras for potential buyers to choose from. We'll start with the driving stuff and that adaptive dynamic system I just mentioned, an option on lower trim levels and one well worth taking up if you're out to maximise the handling attributes of your car. This setup uses sensors that analyse body movement 100 times a second and wheel movement 500 times a second, ensuring that the suspension should always be perfectly suited to the way that you want to drive. Now go for this, and if you spend a little more, there's also the further option of a configurable dynamic system, which will allow you to use the In-Control infotainment touchscreen to more specifically set up the individual dynamic attributes of your car. Adaptive Dynamics can also be ordered packaged up with an adaptive surface response system that controls the throttle and the brakes to maintain traction on low grip or off-road terrain. On the subject of electronic driving assistance, you might want to look at LED headlights that turn with the bends, a surround view camera system, a park assist setup that'll steer you into the tightest space, and a head-up display that projects key information into your line of sight. Now, another optional feature we really like is the activity key, a waterproof, shockproof wristband with an integrated transponder. When wearing it, you can lock the key in the car, removing the anxiety of losing it. And when you return from rock climbing or canoeing, biking or whatever, all you do is hold the wristband near to the J of the Jaguar lettering on the boot and it opens the tailgate so you can access the ordinary key fob where it'll have been safely stowed away. The activity key doesn't even have a battery, so it'll never run out of power. Organising your media connectivity options will also be an important part of the F Pace specification process. At the very minimum, we'd suggest that you upgrade the standard In-Control touch infotainment system to take the more powerful 380-watt Meridian stereo. The standard 80-watt setup is a little bit feeble. It's better, though, if you can stretch to one of the In-Control Touch Pro packages. Now, these offer a choice of either 380 or 825 watts of music power and come complete with a larger 10.2-inch central dash touchscreen, plus a further 12.3-inch TFT instrument panel display that replaces the conventional binnacle dials. Going for this pricey option gives you a 10GB hard drive for your personal media, plus a clever predictive navigation system that learns your regular journeys and displays your expected ETA without you having to enter a destination. Plus, with In Control Touch Pro, there's also the further option of adding in a digital TV receiver if you want it. On to aesthetics. Wheel rim sizes tend to be key for F Pace buyers, so there's a wider than usual range of different alloy designs on offer in sizes up to 22 inches, the same as those used on the car we're trying here. Now, bear in mind that unless you want this Jaguar finished in white or black, you'll have to pay extra for metallic paint. There are 9 shades on offer, including this car's Glacier White finish, plus 3 further premium palette hues of Ingot, Tempest Grey or Storm Grey. R Sport and S buyers also get black pack options, which add meaner looking black finishing to certain exterior elements. And all F Sport buyers can upgrade the cabin ambiance with trim sections featuring finishes like etched aluminium, gloss black, ebony or ash. There are different colour combinations for the leather upholstery too. I mean, here we've got jet red in the interior, and the roof lining can be ordered in one of 3 finishes, one of them being this car's black jet headliner. Illuminated metal front tread plates could well provide the finishing touch. Other optional cabin features include a heated steering wheel, an electrically operable steering column and a lockable cooled glove box you have to order with an air quality sensor that automatically recirculates cabin air if you're passing through an area with poisonous fumes. Talking of cooling, air-conditioned climate front seats are available, plus there are 10 or 14-way electric seat movement packs, which can be ordered with memory buttons if you want to save away your preferred settings. And there's also a further 4-way power lumbar package if you want it. We'd also want the panoramic roof, and that's a feature that can be further upgraded with a sliding glazed panel. This really benefits backseat folk, who will thank you for specifying things like rear privacy glass, 4-zone climate control, seat heating and an electric rear seat reclining mechanism. On to practicalities. Now, you can make better use of boot space by adding in a partition net or boot floor luggage rails. A retractable tow bar can be fitted, and this can be used to attach on a 2-bike carrier. Or you might prefer roof rails that will enable the fitment of carriers for surfboards, skis, snowboards or luggage boxes. If you want to add on side steps, there are either fixed ones or nattier deployable ones that slide out of sight when you close the door. If those appeal, then you'll probably also like the idea of a gesture tailgate that opens when you wave a foot under the rear bumper to allow for hands-free access to the load bay. Now, we'd anticipated that this last feature might be standard given the fact that all F Pace models have an electric tailgate, and we'd certainly have expected not to pay extra for remote release levers in the boot that retract the rear seats. And given that this is an SUV, it would also be nice if Jaguar didn't force buyers to pay extra for a space-saver spare wheel. A full-sized spare is a further option. On to safety, where, as you'd expect, most of the main bases are covered. Now, Jaguar hasn't bothered with offering a driver's knee bag, but twin front, side and curtain airbags are inevitably standard, along with Isofix rear child seat fastenings, anti-whiplash head restraints, tyre pressure monitoring and the usual electronic assistance for traction and stability control. As usual, there's ABS braking with emergency brake assist to aid in panic stops, and those will be advertised to following motorists by automatically activating hazard flashes. Also fitted across the range is an AEB, autonomous emergency braking system, that scans the road ahead as you drive in search of potential collision hazards, whether they be vehicles or pedestrians. Now, if such a thing's detected, you'll be warned. If you don't respond, or you aren't able to, then braking will automatically be applied to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. In addition, all F Pace models get a lane departure warning system that'll alert dozy drivers if they're veering out of their lanes on the highway, and traffic sign recognition, which pictures key road signs as you pass them and then displays them for you on the dash. There's also trailer stability control that'll help keep things steady should you specify a tow bar and make regular use of it. Finally, we particularly approve of the infotainment system's standard In Control Protect feature that connects you through to assistance in the event of a breakdown or an accident, and will automatically summon help to your exact GPS location if the airbags deploy. Now that could be a lifesaver. If you want to go further, there are various additional options packages. One gives you driver condition monitoring, there to monitor your reactions for drowsiness, and lane keep assist, which steers you back into lane if you drift out of it. Another optional two-fold electronic safety package gives you blind spot monitoring that alerts you when overtaking if there's a vehicle in your blind spot, and reverse traffic detection. Now this alerts you to oncoming traffic when you're reversing out of a parking space. On an auto gearbox model, you might also want to specify ACC, Adaptive Cruise Control. Now this uses a radar to automatically keep you a safe distance from the car in front at cruising speeds, and is even able to apply emergency braking if it detects an impending collision. The ACC package includes two additional useful functions: forward alert, which warns you if you're getting too close to the car in front, and queue assist, a feature you can set in a traffic jam so that the car can handle irritating, very low speed stop-start motoring without driver intervention. Jaguar has long championed the use of aluminium construction across its model range. So often in the past, though, the efficiency gains generated by that approach have been negated by weighty engine wear. That's not the case here, or at least it isn't in the case of F Pace models fitted with the 2-litre Ingenium diesel engine that the vast majority of customers will choose. In this guise, this Jaguar is significantly lighter than its direct rivals, tipping the scales at nearly 80 kilograms less than a rival Mercedes GLC, for instance, and that's one of the lighter contenders in the class. Bearing this in mind, it is to some extent a touch surprising that this car doesn't look better against some of its direct rivals than it actually does. An all-wheel drive F Pace 2-litre diesel with all-wheel drive and a manual gearbox returns 54.3 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 134 grams per kilometre of CO2, which leaves it actually a fraction behind the returns you get from a directly comparable Mercedes GLC 220D, despite that Merc's weight disadvantage. These are still impressive stats though, and they don't noticeably deteriorate if you add in the automatic gearbox that most customers will want. In this form, an F Pace 2-litre diesel records 53.3 miles per gallon and 139 grams per kilometre. Unlike many of its rivals, this car also has the advantage of being available in two-wheel drive form too, in which guise it can record 57.7 miles per gallon and 129 grams per kilometre of CO2, which, to give you some perspective, is the kind of return you get from an entry-level 60 PS petrol-powered Ford Fiesta. Did we ever think we'd see a mid-sized 1.7-tonne luxury SUV able to do that? Of course, if your F Pace comes fitted with a more potent 3-litre V6 diesel we're trying here, then it won't be quite as cheap to run. Nevertheless, 47.1 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 159 grams per kilometre is a pretty good showing, almost identical to that of a comparable Porsche Macan diesel. As for the petrol-powered F Pace with its 380 PS 3-litre supercharged V6 engine, well, very few who buy this variant will be worried by its 31.7 miles per gallon showing and 209 grams per kilometre CO2 emissions reading, but it's good to know that it's on a par with the figures for a Macan Turbo. All of the figures I've quoted assume that you've chosen the most frugal of the 4 Jaguar drive control modes, Eco, for your trip, setting that, as the name suggests, adjust all the car's systems for maximum efficiency. Beyond that, your driving is clearly going to play a crucial part in the efficiency process, something that this F Pace's technology wants to help you improve. The In Control Touch infotainment screen's Eco Data section offers a driving style display to help here, showing you your recent efficiency success when it comes to 3 areas: accelerator, speed and engine, and brake. There's an advanced trip screen showing you how your running cost figures stack up, and an impact on fuel display showing you how much the use of features like air conditioning is costing you in terms of consumption. What else? Well, you get the usual unremarkable 3-year warranty, although to be fair, it does cover you for up to 100,000 miles, and service intervals are set at 21,000 miles or every 24 months, whichever comes first, although it would be sensible to consider one of Jaguar's service plans that cover you for virtually everything in advance. There's a standard mileage service plan that covers you for 5 years or 50,000 miles, or a high mileage service plan that covers 5 years and 75,000 miles. Both packages include engine oil and filters, checking and topping up brake fluid, and a 24-month guarantee on any replacement parts. Should anything go wrong, Europe-wide breakdown assistance is part of the deal for 3 years. Now let's look at insuring this Jaguar. The various 2-litre turbo diesel models are rated at groupings between 27 and 30, which will make these F Pace variants slightly cheaper to insure than their direct rivals. Your broker will want a lot more from you if you go for one of the V6 versions though. This 3-litre diesel is rated at group 41, while the supercharged V6 petrol model is up at group 42. As for depreciation, well, the news is almost universally positive here. The smaller diesel engine models retain 47% of their new price after the usual industry standard 3-year ownership period, which betters all of their comparable German rivals. Pick one of the V6 powered Jaguars and the diesel holds on to 40% and the petrol keeps 42% of its value, showings beaten only by Porsche's Macan. The bottom line with these numbers is that an F Pace should be very cost effective to lease for company or private drivers, whether you choose Jaguar's own scheme or one of the many others on offer. The F Pace has been well received, and with good reason. Look at it, drive it and analyse it, and you feel you've a product born after generations of development. It's hard to believe this to be Jaguar's first stab at the SUV segment. The brand's decision to stay true to its principles has helped enormously here. This could have been a rebadged Range Rover or simply a clone of the rival German models that were already well established in this market. Instead, the F Pace has its own identity. The lightweight aluminium construction and the focus on brilliant handling make it very good to drive, while comfort is also high on the list of priorities. Classy looks, a stylish cabin, and pleasingly affordable running costs help complete the package. Inevitably, of course, there are a few things we'd like to see improved, with the most significant issue being the need for a wider range of mainstream engines. That apart, most of our criticisms are relatively minor ones, assuming you can cope with the kind of premium pricing common to this class of car. The steering could be a little more feelsome, and a few questionable choices have been made when it comes to the standard spec, but that's about it when it comes to negativity. All of which leaves this Jaguar as a very tough act to fault. It's one of the standout contenders in this corner of the SUV market. That's no small achievement when you look at the quality of their competition. True, it might not be as rough road ready as a Land Rover product or as track tailored as a Porsche Macan. Most buyers in this segment, though, don't want a mid-sized luxury SUV at either of those two extremes. They want a car like this, a sporting SUV to savour.